Hi everyone, in this expert talk we will show you practical examples of how SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition service can support your business process and help you on the main challenges. So stay with us to the end to learn more about service and check out also some valuable tips for further learning at the end. I'm Fernanda Rodrigues, and today as guests we have here in the studio in Waldorf Yan Li. She is Head of Product Management of Asset and Service, and Gert Tackaert, Chief Product Owner for Service in SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition. Welcome to the show today.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you as well.
Nice to have you here, Gert. Directly first question to you. You talk to many service leaders, right, on our customers. So what are their main questions and concerns these days?
Well, thanks for the question. We talk to many customers across many different industries, and we see that service processes can vary a lot across the different industries. So first of all, you have customers that provide field service, meaning customers send their technicians on site to perform repairs or installations at their customer. But it could also be that they perform in-house repair or in-house service, which means that equipment or devices from customers are returned to a depot or an in-house repair shop, and then the service is performed in-house. So that's already a difference that we see. We also see that there are different ways how service gets initiated. Sometimes it's more ad hoc, unplanned. Yeah? So a customer calls in, says, I have a problem, and then the service starts. In other cases, service is part of a long-running agreement that customers have with their customers. Yeah? So it's more planned, predictive, more recurring. Yeah? The third difference that we see is typically who performs the service. Right? So it could be that companies have their own internal technicians or field service engineers. And in other cases, they outsource the service, outsourcing to third-party service providers, to subcontractors to perform the service. And then finally, a big difference that we also see is, let's say, the complexity of the service tasks. Some companies have technicians performing services, multiple tasks per day, short, fast services. In other cases, services can take multiple days, multiple weeks, or even months, which then, of course, requires detailed and complex planning and preparation. What we sometimes do is we look at all of these differences as different dimensions in service. So it's all about who performs the service. Is it internal? Is it subcontractors? How is the service initiated, more ad hoc on request or recurring? And then where is the service performed? On-site at the customer or in-house in terms of in-house repair?
Now, for the second question, so regardless of the nature of the service offered by these SAP customers across these dimensions you just explained, in each area do you see a strong demand for SAP to support them?
Yeah. Customers are coming to us with many questions, but if we would try to group them a bit, what type of questions we get, I would say the first one is all about operational performance. So operational performance and efficiency of their service tasks. They want to be able to provide qualitative service, good service to their customers with the resources that they have and keeping a high customer satisfaction. The second big topic, I would say, is all about automation and transparency of the service process. So we see a growing demand for service, increasing volume in service tasks and complexity that customers have to execute. And then, of course, it becomes important to automate where possible. Automate the processes, but keeping in these end-to-end, sometimes complex processes, keeping the transparency and the visibility of the end-to-end process. The third I would say bucket of questions is all about business insight and compliance. Yeah? The world is changing, service processes are changing, so companies need to be able to adapt to these changes and have to have the insight that they need, both operationally and financially. We also see that many of our customers are globally operating, they are globally organized, which also means that they have to comply to local regulations, right? They have to, for example, in terms of revenue recognition, they have to follow the rules that they might have locally. The same is true for global trade compliance, for example, or restrictions. Certainly now they have to follow those restrictions as they apply locally. Mm-hmm. Our answer, of course, to all of these questions is the new service solution in S/4HANA Cloud. And the new service solution supports customers along all of those dimensions, providing field service capability, recurring service support, as well as in-house repair.
Great, you mentioned that, Gert. Jan, why is it so important now to talk about service solution in SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition now, at this moment?
Well, yeah, we have been observing a lot of customers has undergoing a digital transformation nowadays. This also includes the changing of the service process itself. So already 10 to 15 years ago, we observed that customers have moved away from seeing service as a pure cost to seeing service as a revenue enabler. So this is a well-known trend already. And we also seeing some customers even stop selling product, but changing their business model to the new type of involvement like a subscription business or pay-to-usage. So that's why it's very essential to have a service solution which can tackle those of the business challenging nowadays newly in the market. So that's why we highly recommend our customers, when they start with the digital transformation in S/4, to have a look at the offering in our service solution. And starting from the 2023 release, as Gert just mentioned, we have introduced a lot of key features which covers who, where, and how. And this is the go-to release that we highly recommend the customer to consider. And it also has so many key features which deserve a special attention. So I will just maybe mention 3 points on top of what I had just said. So for example, that we offered end-to-end modern user experience. And also we offer the real-time capability of financial analysis. So this is based on the modern financial architecture. S4 Service is the first solution inside S4, which takes full advantage of the modern finance architecture. Therefore, it's able to provide real-time financial reporting, margin analysis, and also revenue recognition. Last but not least, we also already starting from 2023 release onwards, lay down the foundation for the model service business, like, for example, everything as a service or subscription business model. So therefore, we highly encourage the customer to already nowadays to have a look, starting from the 2023 release, and then to consider service as a part of digital transformation.
That makes a lot of sense, Jan. Thanks for detail why it's so important. Yet now, of course, I'm curious to know some of the practical examples. How does SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition service really support the customer's business process?
Well, earlier we talked about the dimensions, right? So who, where, how, and so on. How we can combine all of these dimensions into different service processes. I would even say that there are too many possibilities for today's expert talk. What I would like to do is highlight a couple of these scenarios. I will start with field service, a field service process. We can go through the process, and I will also explain a bit what the most recent innovations are that we have introduced in the 2023 release, like Jan explained. So if we look at a field service process, it's a very straightforward process, starting with a customer asking for a service. Yeah? This could be any kind of service. It could be a repair, something like a break fix, something got broken. It could be an installation of a new component. It could be anything. Typically, since it's ad hoc, it's a request, you will get a service sales representative to be involved. The service sales representative will answer the customer by creating a personalized quote for the service. We'll share it with the customer, maybe negotiate on the price. The customer will accept the service, will accept the offer, and then a service planner will get involved. Service planner will do more detailed planning activities, will assign the tasks that need to be performed, and finally will schedule or dispatch a skilled engineer to go and work at the customer site. When the technician or the field service engineer is on site, he can see what needs to be performed, which task he needs to execute, and can then do all of what we call the back reporting. So travel time can be recorded, working time, spare parts that they might have used, and maybe even expenses that they needed to have on site can also be recorded. And it goes back to the service planner. Service planner can review what was done, can finalize the work, and trigger billing. Yeah? Billing could be in many different ways as well. This could be fixed price billing. It could be time and material, depending on what was agreed with the customer. And then the final, let's say, person involved in this end-to-end process is a service accountant who can, at any point in time of the process, in real time see how is the financial flow, the value flow looking like, what is the profitability of the service process. And so we look at this end-to-end process as field service management. Yeah. What is important to say is that this process that I just described is fully integrated with the SAP Field Service Management solution, providing optimized workforce planning as well as mobility or mobile apps for the field service engineers. If we now look at this straightforward process and we look at the latest release, one of the key innovations that we have introduced is intercompany service execution. So what does this mean? I already mentioned it before. A lot of our customers are organized globally. So they have local offices or branch offices in countries, and then sometimes centralized and very specialized service centers. So to support this process between the branch offices that interact with the end customers, as well as the centralized service centers, we have developed and made available this intercompany service execution process. So we support it end-to-end, including everything that the branch offices need to interact with the end customer, as well as what the service centers need to be able to plan and execute all the service activities. So this is one of our key innovations. A second one I would like to highlight is mostly for companies that have very complex service processes or service business. Yeah? They often ask us to be able to separate or detach the commercial activities from the actual detailed planning and operations and execution. Yeah? Because sometimes planning and execution, certainly in complex business, can become very complex, complicated, with many people involved, many resources, internal, external, and so on. And you want to keep that a little bit away from what you commercially negotiate with the customers. Yeah. We call this process service with advanced execution. So this is really the process that allows you to detach. Of course, it's still connected, but you allow to detach the commercial part from the execution part.
That's very clear, Gert. Thanks for explaining. You just explained the first end-to-end process. Now I would like to hear about the second. What is it that you can highlight today?
I would say the second one I would like to highlight is in-house repair. So the first one we talked about field service. We can, as a second scenario, focus on in-house repair. Sometimes we also call it in-house service because it's more than just repairing something. It could also be installing or upgrading or calibrating certain components. So there's more to it than repair. But if we look at this process, again, very straightforward process, end-to-end supported within S/4HANA Cloud. Same type of business roles or employee roles are involved. You have a service planner involved, service technicians are involved, the service accountant is involved. But what is special about in-house repair is the whole logistics process. So different from field service where you send a technician on site. In case of in-house repair, you really bring the device from the customer back to a depot or an in-house repair shop. And this, of course, involves inbound logistics. It involves tracking all of the movements of these customer assets while the repair is happening. You need to know at any point in time where your customers' assets are. This is kind of refers back to the transparency topic that I mentioned earlier. And then after the repair, we need to be able to trigger the outbound logistics back to the customer. So it's inbound, outbound, and then keeping track of all the internal movements. So that would be an end-to-end scenario that we offer. Also in this one, we have heavily invested in the last couple of releases. One key highlight I would like to mention is the process flow or process visibility. So here in this video, we see an in-house repair. And this is kind of an in-house repair, it could contain one asset from the customer, but it could also be multiple. So in this case, it has two what we call repair objects. So customer has an issue with two, in this example, hydraulic pumps. And these are returned. And I can see at any point in time what is going on with these customer assets. I can see that one is already done and another one is still in progress. And I can zoom in, so I can drill down into each of these repair objects and see what's actually going on. So if you look at the first one, then I get all of the details of that specific asset. I can see what status it has, and this is what I wanted to show. So in the transaction history or the process flow, I can see the full flow from the initial request of what the customer had towards quoting to the customer, the planning of the service order, the confirmations that were done by the technicians, the billing that was triggered. In this case, it's a fixed price billing based on the service order, and also the return of the serviced component back to the customer. So I have that full transparency, full visibility of the process. If we look at the first one, or the other one, sorry, the second one, which is still in progress, there again, we can look at the process flow and we see that it hasn't gone through the full flow yet. So it was just received, nothing more, but directly from this repair object, I can now make a decision either to create a quote, to create an order, or maybe send it back to the customer. So we have that full transparency and the ability to trigger these follow-up actions. One key innovation. The second one I would like to mention is something called billable diagnosis. We see that in-house repair, in most cases, the first thing a company will do is do a diagnosis of the problem. That you receive something, what is really the problem with such a device, with such a customer asset? So they do a diagnosis or an inspection. Based on the inspection results, they will then be able to provide a more accurate quote, because they know what's really the problem. And then the customer can decide, based on this quote, whether they want to continue with the repair or not. What billable diagnosis allows you to do is, if the customer would decide not to continue with the repair because it's maybe too expensive, then we are still able to charge or to invoice the inspection and diagnosis work to the end customer. So that's the second one. One more thing I want to mention, it's like a sneak preview in what will come in the future, or in the near future even. But because this is something that our development team is currently working on, they are combining both processes that I've explained, field service and in-house repair, into one harmonized process now. Why? Because we see at a lot of our customers that you cannot clearly separate the two. It's not like everything is field service, everything is in-house repair. In many cases, it's a combination of both. So you could imagine sending a field service technician on site to do an inspection of something that got broken, or to dismantle a component from a larger machine. And then after the field service activities, it would continue with in-house repair. Yeah, so here we have a look at a quotation that includes both dismantling and inspection. So the first task will be a field service task to do the dismantling, followed by an inspection which is in-house. This quotation has been fully accepted, and we can see that a follow-up service order has already been created. In the service order, again, the dismantling on-site and the inspection to be done in-house. In the confirmation, we can now see that the dismantling is already done by a technician in the field. This was done. And as a next step, we will now start the in-house repair process by triggering for that specific hydraulic pump that was dismantled. From the customer, we will start triggering all of the logistics processes. So we go into the details of the repair object. And as we saw before in the previous video, I can look at the process flow and see that the in-house repair is created. There is already one confirmation, but there is no return of this component yet. So now we trigger the return, and we see that the return order is already completed, and the device was returned to a depot or to an in-house repair shop where the repair will happen. Back in the service order, I can now, as an engineer, as a technician, confirm the inspection and say that this inspection work for 1 hour is done. Confirm it and provide the results of this inspection in this confirmation. Set it to completed to finalize this specific part of the work. Then going back to the service order, we see that now both the dismantling and the inspection have been performed. We have 2 confirmations for this service order. So now we have enough details to provide the customer with a more accurate quote to do the repair. So this is a process that we call requoting. So we are creating from the original quote, which was only for dismantling and inspection, we are creating now a second follow-up quote or a requote to include the repair work. So based on our inspection, we know that we are going to need 5 hours of repair to do this repair. And as I mentioned before, it could be that the customer does not accept this quote, and then the process would end. But in this case, we assume the customer accepts the quote, and we now have the service order updated with a third task. Besides dismantling and the inspection, we now also have a repair task that needs to be performed. Again, as an engineer, as a technician, I can now create a confirmation to confirm the repair work. And I can finally go back to my repair object, see in the process flow all of the activities that have happened, so the 3 confirmations, and from now on also trigger the delivery back to the customer because the repair is finished, so the device can be returned to the customer. Also, this outbound delivery is visible in the transaction history or in the process flow as a return to customer, and it's completed. Last step of the process is to set everything to completed, and this finalizes all the activities required for this repair object.
Now, Jan, you mentioned that 2023, no doubts, was a milestone release for service, and Gert already shared one upcoming innovation. So can you give us a glimpse what else is coming next, what more SAP customers can expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, SAP is highly committed in assisting service customers in their digital transformation. And important, I would like to mention here, it does not only include S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition, what we talk about here today. It also covers the whole solution portfolio, which includes Service Cloud, FSM, RSH, Asset and Service Manager, in the future also digital manufacturing and APM. But since today we focus on the service S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition service. So I would like to share with you also the comprehensive roadmap that we have here with a focus of 3 things. Yeah, let's start maybe with the commercial excellence and the financial insight. Yeah, so we spend a lot of effort on providing the commercial flexibilities in our solution, especially when selling service, including bundle product, bundle service. And important to mention is that we not only provide flexibility, we also ensure the consistency here in the financial reporting, including margin analysis, profitability analysis, and revenue recognition. Right. Secondly, that we put a lot of effort on operational excellence in handling logistic parts in complex also service tasks. So that we put a lot of effort on giving customer an opportunity to fulfill the logistic process for serviceable products and the component in complex service across different locations and across different countries. Last but not least, that we also see that service as an enabler for circular economic. So therefore, we also do a lot of innovation here to support this new business by enabling process, for example, repair process, remanufacturing, and refurbishment process for the component and service parts. Additionally, what I want to mention, right, SAP wants to become the business AI company. We also infuse a lot of the AI use cases, ideas to streamline the service process and further automate the process for our customers.
That's great to hear. I think this is also great news for the people who are watching the video, right? I would like to thank you so much, Jan and Gert, for joining us today in the Expert Talk. Also for you who watched this video, if you like it, leave a comment to us. I'm also curious to know your opinion, your feedback. I also invite you to visit our SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition community. There you can find more relevant contents to our learning and also get in contact with our SAP experts. You can also send us an email via insights4@sap.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.